we are here to present accessible publicly distributed rendering about BURP and Renderfarm.fi. My name is Julius Tuomisto.
And I'm Janus Kristensen, and I'm doing the BURP part, and Julius is pretty much doing the Renderfarm.fi part.
Okay, so the system is such that I will be speaking first, just quickly, giving a small overview of the situation, and then I'll give over to Janus, and then I'll take over later. Okay, so basically, I wanted to start with something funny because basically what happened, of course, on Thursday morning was that our server went down for the first time this badly in about 2 years. And Murphy's law is that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And actually, this is us at our ISP trying to fix the situation, and I thought that I would play you a little song that kind of relates to this situation, if it plays.
If that works.
Yeah. Actually, it doesn't, obviously. But okay, I tried. Anyway, you all know the song, and it's Monty Python. So let's move on. Anyway, so what we're speaking about today is basically about publicly distributed rendering. And what is publicly distributed rendering? It's basically about people, volunteers, being able to participate in 3D rendering and giving the public the access to rendering resources which they otherwise would probably not have access to, or at least many kind of up and coming artists and so forth. And basically, how I'm standing here, Janus he has a right to stand here because he's basically created BURP. He's created the rendering backend that we use. But why I'm standing here is that about 3 years ago, I thought that I had an original idea, and then I actually found out that Janus had this original idea quite many years before. But I got into I got the job basically starting from 2008, when we got some funding in and we started to do Renderfarm.fi. And like I based about the technology. So BURP is basically about giving people the access to rendering resources that they otherwise probably wouldn't have access to, or even people that have access to large rendering resources, but perhaps don't want to use the money or don't want the hassle of setting up the environment themselves. That's a pretty good reason in itself also. So I'm going to step out now, and I'm going to give the stage to Janus Kristensen.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Could you start the presentation? So where did you put the presentation?
Yeah, you can just.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
You can do it full screen, I think here.
I'm not a Mac user. I usually use command lines, so.
Okay.
Yay. Okay, so I'm Janus, and this small presentation for the next 20 minutes or so is going to be about the idea of BURP, or the Big and Ugly Rendering Project. But I'm going to start out somewhere a little different with this, because actually I'm going to say I feel it's very awesome to be here today, because assembly is pretty much the combination of all the things that I like. It's graphics, it's computer games, it's music, and it's all mixed together in this really cool kind of party. And we're pretty much in it all together. And another awesome thing that I looked at recently was this movie. So how many of you have seen or at least heard of this movie? Just raise your hand. Okay, that's about 150% of the audience. So this movie is pretty well known, and it is one of the best-selling movies of all time. And it's around 80% CG, computer-generated graphics, and around 60% of that is motion capture. One of the leading visual effects studios who took part in making this movie is the New Zealand-based Veta, and their render farm is pretty big, you can imagine, because this movie has a lot of complexity, it has a lot of characters, and they're in this very big environment on Pandora. And to be able to render all this, you have to have a really big render farm. So according to the datacentreknowledge.com website, they have 4,000 blade servers running to be able to render this kind of thing. And just to get some kind of grasp of how much processing power that is, you can take all the computers out there in the arena, and you could multiply that by, I don't know, 10 or 20 or something, and you still don't have the same processing power as this kind of computer has. So it's really big supercomputer. So basically, they partition it into 32 machines, each with 40,000 processors and 104 terabytes of memory. That's a lot. And you can imagine how much this thing costs. So, okay, they produce big movies, they have big budgets, they can afford this kind of stuff. But if you're an independent developer or an independent artist, or you're making a game and you want to have in-game graphics, you can't afford this kind of stuff. Anything, even if it costs 42 euro, is too much for that kind of budget. So you want something else. You can't just build this kind of render farm for yourself. So I came up with the idea that we need to do something different, assembly style. Basically take it low level, take it to the masses, make the community try to do something about this. And it turned out someone had been doing that before. A couple of crazy scientists back in 1994 or so tuned this very big telescope, radio telescope, into a more or less random frequency and started to listen for, you know, aliens. And they wanted to analyze the radio signals, and it turned out the analysis was so computationally expensive that they couldn't do it on their own machines, and they didn't have access to a big supercomputer or, you know, there weren't corporate sponsors who were willing to donate a lot of money to finding aliens. So they kind of had to do something else. So they came up with a pretty original idea at the time. They wanted to have all their friends run a screensaver. So whenever people's computers were idle, because people were away or because the computer was just standing there doing nothing, this screensaver would kick in and start using all those idle or wasted processing power. So very quickly, their friends started to use this, and their friends' friends started to use this, and it became very popular. In fact, so popular that they could analyze all the data that they got more than enough times. So they built something new. And this new thing is what BURP is actually based upon. It's called BOINC, the Berkeley Open Infrastructure for Network Computing. And it's a platform for doing this kind of computations. Basically taking a piece of very complicated work, breaking it up into pieces, sending it to people on the internet, letting them do the computations locally, and then gathering back the results and mixing them together to try to get some kind of interesting results. There's a lot of projects already running on this platform. Most of them are scientific. You have all kind of stuff like finding a cure for cancer, figuring out how the climate is going to be in the next 10 years, all kinds of stuff, searching for aliens as well. The same project is still alive. So what it does is basically it looks at the project servers, it gets some kind of instructions and an application, it could be anything, and it computes something and then uploads the results back up. So how do this kind of supercomputer compare to, you know, real supercomputers that are expensive and that people like Veta and Pixar has? I made this slide so small that you can't read it. But you can still see the graph. And this is the number of computers that are attached to all the BOINC-based projects in total. And the number is still rising right now. There's around 5 million computers attached. That's a lot of computers if you think about it. In fact, BOINC, if it was a supercomputer, would be the top supercomputer in the world. Here we have the top, or the very top of the real supercomputers, and you can see that Oak Ridge National Laboratory is at the first place with a peak power of around 2,000 teraflops. That's a lot of computing power. But BOINC has actually around 5.4 teraflops. That's double as much. And it's gathered by just people like you and me. So, BURP. BURP is pretty much running on top of BOINC. And the whole idea of taking a big, complicated problem and splitting it into minor pieces is what this is about. So how do you apply that to animations and computer graphics? So normally what you do is you'd go into 3ds Max or you go into Blender or whatever 3D program you're using, and you make your scene, and you press render. And then you'll sit back, grab a cup of coffee, go to the toilet, do whatever, because it's going to take a whole lot of time. Because for every frame, it can be like 2 hours. And if you're making a 2-hour movie, you're going to have a lot of frames, because typically that's around 25 frames per second in such a movie. So that's really bad. That's a really lot of time to use. So what you can do instead is you can take away a lot of frames part from that equation by distributing all the frames to different computers and render them at the same time. It's still going to take a lot of time per frame and a little bit of extra time because you have to spend time sending it out. But it's still a whole lot better because now you can render pretty much all the frames at the same time. And that's the first approach to this kind of computational problem. Basically, take all the frames, render them at the same time. BURP does this, and it's working pretty well so far. But you can do even better. You can take each frame from the movie and divide it into even smaller parts, say, for instance, 4 parts, and you can send each of those 4 parts to different computers and get even more distributed computing that way. So you get less time per frame because you're rendering perhaps 4 times as fast. And you get some extra overhead because now you have to send even more stuff to people. And maybe they have to do something when they start up the render. It's really nice. It's actually really, really nice if the overhead is small. For instance, if it's 0, you get a lot of less time per frame. But if the overhead is large, which it is sometimes, it's not as good. So we didn't render a big Bug Bunny, but we could have, I guess. And actually, I think that's one of the things we'll be trying at some point, to render an actual movie. This is a screenshot from the main BURP website showing what you see when an animation is done. So basically, you can go to the website, an artist uploads his stuff, and it gets rendered, and you end up with this kind of page where you can stream the video, the final video, from the website, and you can see all kinds of details about what is the video about, and how much processing power did it use, and how fast was it compared to what it would have been if you didn't use the service and stuff like that. And the cool thing is that both BURP and, as Julius is going to talk about later, Renderfarming.fi, are using open licenses. So the results of the animations can be viewed online using whatever you want, under Creative Commons, for instance. And Big Bug Bunny is one example of a project which is available under Creative Commons. Both the scenes, all the files that were used to create the movie, and the finished project. So that's why we can take like a single character like the squirrel Rinky here, and render it on a render farm like this. So, any questions so far? Okay, I think I'm going to put Veta on the top 500 list, because Veta, who are doing Lord of the Rings and stuff like Avatar, their render farm is actually only around 400 gigaflops. So that's 0.4 teraflops. Sorry, 400 teraflops. Yeah, sorry. So that's way smaller than what BOINC has to offer. So far, on both the BURP main site and the Renderfarm.fi site, we only have around a couple of thousand machines attached. So we're not that big yet, but there's potential. If more people attach to this kind of projects, they're going to be pretty powerful in themselves. When I started the project, the goal was to have 100 people sign up. Well, that kind of happened the first day, so the server was kind of flooded. And since then, people have kept signing up and signing up, even though I'm trying to say, no, not anymore, I can't take it. But go check out renderfarming.net. It has links to both the BURP website and renderfarm.fi. And right now, as Julius said, we're having some trouble on the renderfarming.fi site, but hopefully we'll get back online very soon with interesting stuff to render. And I think Julius is also going to talk about that a little later. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to continue from Janus's part. Continue the presentation, and yes, so basically, of course, I guess quite a few people actually online. This question has been asked online also. Basically, what is the difference actually between our two websites? Janus has been running his since 2004. Basically, I've been running mine since I think we started open beta. We started 1 year ago, about in June 2009. Before that, we were doing a closed beta, but let's not talk about that because that was a kind of a test website. Anyway, so basically, what is the difference between our two projects, and what new have we actually brought into BURP? Is that we kind of whereas basically Janus never kind of promoted his project or kind of focused on the accessibility of the project, then we've actually focused very much on these aspects. So it's doing basically exactly what Janus was talking about, which is that we're kind of trying to now emerge this potential of getting people involved, and we're trying to get to this point by basically making it as simple as possible to participate. Now, of course, as in Janus's website, basically the client installation has always been super easy, and this is basically BOINC. We base it on BOINC, which is available for almost, I guess, any conceivable platform. But basically, of course, currently we support the major operating systems: Mac, Windows, and Linux. Actually, Mac support we added to Renderfarm.fi. It's not yet available on BURP, but on the BURP main website. But basically, the client installation is super easy. It takes you about 5 minutes. You should do it. But basically, what we have added is we've tried to make it actually as simple to use as possible from within Blender. And we've created an uploader script, which is basically enables Blender users to directly upload their work to Renderfarm.fi without actually using the browser. Whereas before, on a BURP website, you would have needed to fill, I think it was about 8 forms that you need to go through. About 8 forms that you need to go through in order to get your render done by all the volunteers. We've actually created an uploader script. I was here actually last year talking about it. It's been basically coded by Nathan Ledbury, who's a part of the core developing community of Blender. And Nathan, together with Jesse Kaukonen, our great coder also. But basically, it's Nathan's handwork, and Nathan has actually created the script, and it's a Python script which has been with the new release of Blender 2.5, which is now in beta 3, should be coming out. I guess it's been pushed and pushed and pushed, but I think that 2.6, the final version, should be out within 6 months or so. Let's hope. But basically, we've integrated, because of the new functionality of the user interface in Blender 2.5, we've been able to integrate the uploader script so that it looks like it's completely a part of Blender. And actually, the result has been that we've actually, since we basically released the new uploader, which happened basically, I think about 2-3 months ago, we've actually seen a really huge increase in the amount of works that people send. Unfortunately, at the moment, most of the work, or many of the works, are not basically, people like to test the service. I completely agree with this. So I agree that people should probably, or they need to be able to test a service like this in order to gain trust. But many of the tests have been actually, a lot of people have been sending in all kinds of cubes and different things that actually you could render much faster on a single computer because of the overhead that we get from distributing the work to multiple computers.
If I can add a couple of words to that, the value of a render farm is actually not just how fast it is, but also how easy it is to use. So when you use a render farm as part of your tool chain in a graphics company, for instance Veta, you spend a lot of energy into making this kind of render farm available to the graphics artists and to the people who are going to use the material in them. And that's one of the parts that Renderfarm.fi has been looking at so far. Yeah.
And this is really, it's been a really huge increase, and I'm expecting the increase to actually just get bigger. Hopefully we'll have more work that actually needs the render farm to be able to be completed. But a good work example of this, actually, we have this, maybe some of you have seen it on the big screen or in Assembly TV. We actually have this animation running right now, which was actually rendered. The commercial was actually rendered partly on Renderfarm.fi, and it would have taken one computer about 10 days. We did it in this case, because of the overhead, we would have probably done it much faster, but there's always overhead. We did it in 1 day currently. That's just a quick show. Actually, the bigger the scenes and the more complex you get, basically it's basically about size. I guess it's about size and basically
size of the files and how much time does it take to render a frame. And for movies like the ones produced by Pixar and Veta and that kind of stuff, it's typically between 2 and 9 hours per frame. So if you produce a very long movie, it's going to take a lot of time to render it.
Yeah, you can imagine if basically 1 second is 24 frames, then you really start to get the need for really hard computing. But basically, I thought about first telling about the Blender, because what is also important about Blender and us basically is that something that I realized. I don't come from the Blender community myself. I'm more in the music side. But basically, I've come to realize that the Blender is, because it's open source, it's very much based on this sense of community. And I was very lucky to find this Finnish Blender community and kind of get them involved. And I thought that I'd mention that actually I think that this is a worldwide phenomenon right now. I don't think that it's only related to Finland, but actually, of course, I only have my own knowledge is based in Finland currently. So, but basically, what I've seen during the process that I've been working on this project is that Blender is basically seeping into the companies through this young talent, which is actually down at the ladder currently, but it's very much moving up, and you can really see this movement, and I think that makes it a perfect companion for us, because we're trying to reach communities, and of course, in order to have something like BURP or Renderfarm.fi, you basically need to be able to distribute the client, and of course we need an open. For that, we at least a certain or like a secure, so that we don't cut any copyrights or whatever. We need
a community.
Yeah, yeah. So
because
so
without people rendering, you don't have anything.
Yeah. So this is very much about the community. But basically, what I've found also is that there is a huge existing community, and it's very much related to Blender and Renderfarm.fi in that sense. But basically, what's happened and what we've done actually, what we managed to do is that we got Blender integrated now into the latest official. The uploader actually integrated into the latest official Blender 2.5 release. So you can actually imagine that the site is going to look very active in let's say midterm, because basically every download of the new Blender is getting the uploader script in it, which was a huge thing for us basically, and opens up completely new ways of basically reaching people. But also the whole thing is that because of this community and because it's an open service, basically we are very different from a closed render farm in many ways. But let's not go into that specifically, but you can read about those things on the websites. But basically, what this means is that the more people join and the bigger the community becomes, whether you're a Blender user or you just want to participate, because you can do both. You can do one or you can do both. Actually, no. We prefer that if you're a Blender user, you also participate in the rendering, because that's very. But we have some tools to make you do that soon.
Actually, there's an interesting story to tell about that, because when I started out the service some years ago, I thought, oh, okay, people are going to use this render farm way too much, and we're not going to have the computational power to support that kind of use. So originally, the system was made with a credit system, so whenever you had your computer running, rendering, you would get credit, and then you could spend credit if you wanted to render an animation. And it turned out that so many people joined just to render that it wasn't even necessary to have credits, because the artists simply couldn't keep up providing enough work for the render farm. And that's very, very nice to see that people really support this kind of open movie community stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. So basically now I guess we're kind of now with the uploader we're kind of addressing this issue, and it's kind of it will be actually interesting to follow this development of whether the animation queue is like it sometimes has filled up for us already, and when it gets very cute, then people get anxious about their works, of course, and I guess that never really happened in BURP yet.
No,
yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, what we're also doing is we're basically creating a continuation plan for Renderfarm.fi, and we really plan to keep it open and free, and emphasis on both words, so open and free. But basically, what I wanted to use this opportunity for also, I wanted to promote something that we've actually been working on very much. Unfortunately, now, due to circumstances, that the website is a little bit on shaky ground. Fortunately, it will be up. I think it will take maybe 2 weeks or such. We will be back in full action. But basically, what we've been doing the whole spring, we've been developing actually, Janus had already developed a nice API for XML RPC traffic, but what we've been actually extending on that part, and we've been working on basically integrating communities, existing communities with Renderfarm.fi. And basically, what we've done is as the first step, we've actually managed with the Reka Movie guys who are present here today. We've actually managed to make a really nice first step into integrating the two services and enabling users of Reka Movie to easily pass on work to Renderfarm.fi and kind of attach their accounts between the two services. This will be hopefully available when we get back into real action in about 2 weeks. 2 weeks time. But this is really big stuff for us, because RekaMovie.com is actually, I think it's currently the biggest independent movie website on the planet. independent movie creation website on the planet. But this is really, I think that the marriage of the two services is really cool, because I really believe that there's a lot of use between the two services and a lot of people who could actually benefit from using it. And what it will actually enable is that fans will not just participate in the creation of the movies, but they can also give their computing power to the movies. And actually, the cool thing is that apart from getting Janus here from Denmark, I actually managed to get Kalle-Max Hoffmann from Germany, actually, to participate.
Hey guys.
Is it on?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Hi.
And I actually got Kalle-Max Hoffmann from Germany. Kalle-Max is actually, he created now the, I guess, Kalle-Max, you could probably tell
sure.
that.
Yeah, well, I've been working in the German film industry for like 13 years now as a digital artist. So, yeah, did all kinds of effects on films that most of the time you don't see, because in Germany they only make romantic comedies and stuff like that. And most of the time stuff has to be retouched or erased or whatever, you know. So if you're a science fiction fan like myself, that's pretty boring. And me and my colleagues, we have been thinking what to do about this, you know. And then finally, Sin City and 300 came out, films that were shot in a studio where there was nothing except for the actors, and all the scenery was added in the computer. So we thought, yeah, that's our specialty, so why don't we try this? And after making some test films, some shorts, we thought, okay, that works. Now let's make a feature film, 90 minutes long. And yeah, since we some kinds of geeks, we thought, let's make a Western in the future with snow and motorcycles and explosions, and that's Snowblind. Yeah, and fortunately we came across Wreck a Movie when we were in the developing stage of that project, because yeah, what we actually shot for 4 weeks in the studio were just guys with cowboy hats in front of a green wall, you know. And yeah, this film has about 1,200 shots that each needed some scenery, you know, where the scene takes place. So we had to create lots of rooms and mountains, forests, and highways, whatever. And yeah, that's a lot of work for like 3 guys that we were. So we used Wreck a Movie at first to get photographs of landscapes from all over the world, like Norway, Sweden, Finland, where there's a lot of snow. And that was really kind of, yeah, lifesaver. At least it enabled us to finish the film while it was summer in Germany, because we couldn't photograph any snow. So that was pretty amazing. And then it got even better when we needed some CGI footage, like camera flying over a frozen lake where a woman was speeding across with her motorbike, because that's something you could only do with full CG, so photos were not enough. You really had to create a scenery so the camera could really fly through that area. And that was a thing where we were kind of at our limits, you know, because that's not the thing we do most of the time. So fortunately we found some Blender artists on Wreck a Movie who did really great work and did these shots for us by means of collaborative filmmaking.
And now I guess you're working on the new film, and I guess
exactly.
What do you think about basically the ability of your fans, basically the movie fans? What do you think about this new like basically do you think that it will be a big thing for your fans and maybe for the community that basically Renderfarm you can kind of also give your computing time to them?
Yes, certainly, because we found out with this experience in Snowblind with the Blender shots that's working really great, and you still need a lot of time because our artists render their stuff on their own machines, and that just doesn't cut it, you know, because as Janus explained, you need hours sometimes for a frame, and yeah, so with Renderfarm we can really plan lots more of these shots, so the whole movie will look much more impressive. And we also found out making Snowblind that it's very easy to actually make stereoscopic films, so it's in real 3D and you can watch it with these glasses and it looks cool as hell, you know. But since we didn't plan this for Snowblind, it's yeah, not that useful. But our next film, which is called Vampire Princess 3D, and which is also going to be some kind of a grindhouse, trashy, new funny approach to the vampire genre, will make lots of use of this. So yeah, we'll plan lots of effect shots right away that can be rendered, for example, through Renderfarm.fi and using Blender, of course. And yeah, I think it will be pretty awesome. And if you would like to know more about this whole process, you can join us at 3 today at the Renderfarm booth. Yeah, well, we're giving a 1-hour explanation of how Snowblind was made and what tools we used and how it's looking, and you get to see some clips from the film and stuff.
I guess the cool thing is that you're actually presenting with one of the Blender.fi community members. So
exactly,
the
Hanno Hoffren, who has contributed the biggest shots for the film. He's there, and he also showing the setup, so you can see the stuff we shot, you know, which kind of looks embarrassing because it's only the green wall and the cowboy hats, but then you see all the setups with the wireframe stuff, particles flying around, and then you get the finished shot in the film with sound, and that's really quite impressive. So going that way without real money and ending up with a result that's, you know, some way close in between Sin City and 300 or Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, it's pretty awesome, and we're very happy with the results. So if you're interested, come check it out. Yeah.
Okay, so basically to finish off, that's a great shot of Kalemax. To finish things off, basically, I would invite you guys to participate in Vampire Princess 3D, because I guess the production is open now, and we're actually going to use Vampire Princess 3D as a kind of a launching platform for this new integration, and try to work on actually, if you're a Blender user, you should definitely join, because I think it will be an interesting possibility to basically influence what the integration will be like, and how you think the integration should work. Because we are actually very focused on now on doing this, focusing on this API for Renderfarm.fi, which enables this collaboration. Thanks to Kalemax, I would like to finish this session here. We had this nice poster, and you can get your poster actually at the front of the presentation stage. You can get it's free, or come get it. Even better, come get it from the Renderfarm.fi booth. Hopefully, we'll also be making perhaps some blog about how we develop the API and with Kalemax and so forth. And it's been also a privilege to have both of these guys here in Finland. Actually,
to be here.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Yes.